Um, am I audible and visible?
Yeah, you are, sir.
All right. Very good afternoon to everyone, and thank you to Meghnad, Desai and Jai Hind College for this opportunity. It's not often that I get to speak to such a wide group of students, but I can't see any of them because their videos are all shut. So it would be yeah, that is sort of a it could have been good if students were on. But yes, let me talk about my topic today. I'm going to talk about what has digitization done in the India growth story. And I do I have the permission to share my screen, please? All right, thank you. Okay. All right. So the topic that I'm going to speak today is harnessing digitization and automation for economic development. And you know, a lot of us have seen how digitization affects our lives. Our mobile phones, our computers, the processes that we use today versus what we were using even 5 years back are markedly different, and therefore digitization is not something that is untouched from us. But let me try and provide you some perspective on what is happening at an India level on digitization. So that's where we go, harnessing digitization and automation for sustainable economic development. So what does digitization mean? I mean, actually digitization and automation, we kind of sometimes use them interchangeably, but they are not same. They are actually quite different. So digitization is basically just, you get to a soft copy from a hard copy. That's essentially it is. So as I've given an example here, you can take patient records which are on paper and convert them into electronic ones. And automation, on the other hand, is processes that are available. There are steps which are done by humans, and then you convert them into processes that are done by software or hardware. So that is the core differentiation, and this is important for our current thought. So in India, digitization started about 20 years back when it was the Y2K problem was there. A lot of computers during that time had only years in 2 digits, and there was this issue that what happens when the year 2000 comes in, because you will have a repeat of years that were not in 2 digits, that were in 2 digits. So Y2K was big, and this was around the year 2000. So a lot of work around that area started 20 plus years back. In 2006, the Indian government started the e-governance initiative, where the idea was that a large part of governance has to be digitized. And then 2015 was when the Digital India initiative was launched. The idea was then that every aspect of governance should have some kind of digitization. And COVID pandemic at this point has made both of them absolutely relevant. And you would realize none of us were bereft of knowledge of video conferencing, but we would not have used it to the extent that we did during the pandemic. And it was not just in India, it was all over the world. It was at almost every level, from school, colleges, universities, professional areas, and government as well. So that's when the big pickup happened in both digitization. And once digitization was there, then automation was also coming up, and not very far behind. And what has also helped during this period is the phenomenal speed in hardware. Many of the students here must have heard about Moore's law. If you haven't, just Google it up. You'll see what I'm trying to say. So Gordon Moore at Intel started Moore's law, and you realize what I'm trying to say. Now, with the launch of India's Digital India program in 2015, government has taken a major step in transforming India. So, I have some thoughts for you here on the presentation, which shows that items like digital e-locker, the e-education, e-health, e-sign, various things are now available on on digitization. And you have e-governance, you have e-kranti, electronic delivery, you have universal access to phones. There are several things that are on the government's agenda. I didn't want to make it a very boring presentation like this. I'm not sure many students will be interested in that. So, which is why I would take a point to say, wait a minute, let's make it a little more interesting. Let me show you some charts. So this is a chart of India. And just to get an idea of, first of all, how big is India? What is India as a market? I've shown this chart for you. So, in India, I come from Orissa. Orissa is as big as Spain in terms of population. And in terms of, when you see countries like that, you will notice how many countries add up to India. So you have Brazil in UP, you have the whole of UK in Rajasthan, you have Mexico in Maharashtra, you have Italy in Karnataka, you have Iraq in Kerala. So large parts. The whole of Canada is just our 7 sisters, northeastern states. So this is the size of the country that we are in. And this is the opportunity that is there for digitization and automation. And just to slice it a little bit in terms of age, in terms of incomes. So you see the chart on this is slide 7 on the right side, if it is visible. So in 2005, people who earned more than $1 million dollars were more than the high income people were barely 1 million households, and upper middle class was about 16 million odd households. So yeah, we have somebody has raised a hand. Is there a point? No. Sorry, just someone has raised a hand, so I didn't realize what happened. Lower middle class was about 51 million households, and the rest, low class, the poor would be around the 69% in low income households. I would not say poor, but low income households. That changed meaningfully in 2018. As you can see, the number of low income households has fallen. The number of lower middle income has increased, nearly doubled, and there's a big jump in the upper middle class as well. And high income also has gone up by 8 times. What do you expect in 2030? You notice that this is becoming a reverse onion and now a mushroom. So 2030 idea is that only 15% of the households in this country would be low income. There will be a huge middle class of around 168 million households, and there will be a massive high income class of about 29 million households. So this is where we could possibly go, in terms of our current growth. And our median income, age is just about 29 years. In fact, the cohort that I'm talking to right now, 130 odd people of you, are not even representative. Indians are slightly elder than you, but they're not like me, definitely, because I'm double your age. So this is the sort of country that you see. The point I'm trying to make here is that India is large enough to have markets of several countries, and Indians are getting richer and richer. And what happens is, you would have learned in your economics that your wants go from non-discretionary to discretionary when income levels move up. I will go to the next slide. What has happened with digitization? Just to give you a number of numbers, a number of thoughts. So I said about median age. You compare that with the rest of the world. So Japan's median age is nearing 50. Germany, Italy, South Korea, Canada, Russia, all of them are fairly old. China is again nearing 40. India is a very, very young country from that perspective. And what has happened now, if you see size in terms of digitization, just a thought here, wireless subscribers were about 177 million then in 2017, just 2017. And in 3 years, we will go to about 1.4 billion. That's the sort of size we will go to. This is how the wireless broadband subscribers in this country are going to rise. You can see the rapid growth of digitization in each of these charts. I mean, and notice from the caption of my slide, that this is only the first of 4 slides. So, just understand that, cost of data has gone down. The number of Jan Dhan accounts, where everybody has to have a bank account has increased meaningfully. So, more than 400 million such accounts are there, 400 million. The cost versus countries in the world is one of the lowest. It's not the lowest, but one of the lowest. And most of you have been using, IMPS, immediate payment service transactions. You can see how those transactions have moved up across the years. So over 40 trillion rupees, 40 lakh crores is now transacted just through IMPS, and IMPS is just one of the ways, right? IMPS, NEFT, and RTGS are the 3 major sort of ways in which we transact today, major channels. And affordability. This is how affordability is there in data, and eKYC verification. This is again, the big part, the big push of Aadhaar has been that you're able to, do a know your customer in minutes. So eKYC verifications have moved up meaningfully. And again, this is again important. Notice the second bullet. India's overall wireless internet data usage has increased by almost 7 times to 32,000 petabytes. What's a petabyte? A petabyte is 1024 terabytes. So, and what's a terabyte? It's 1024 gigabytes. So we are already at about 32 exabytes. And it was 4 exabytes earlier, and now it's become 32 exabytes today. The quick question, of course, is what do Indians do with all the data? They watch YouTube. A large part of the data usage is on YouTube. And why it's becoming cheaper? So you have, and it's going to be cheaper. You have communications, your cloud infrastructure sort of being built up now. 5G has already come in, diverse portfolio of digital services. This is how, things have changed in terms of Jan Dhan accounts. So in FY22, Jan Dhan account beneficiaries, and then you notice across states how the percentage of population has accounts. A large parts of the population in several states has Jan Dhan accounts. And then these are the NFS transactions that you're seeing on the right side. Again, more charts on digitization, but this is my last at the moment. FASTag collections, for those who have traveled, out of the city, just notice the number of, how FASTag collections have gone up. So the amount is again, 40 billion, which is about 4,000 crores. The number of such, transactions has been about 250 million. The mobile internet subscriber base has flattened out, but at what level? About 800 million, 80 crore people out of our 1.4 billion have an internet subscriber base. UPI payments again going up, e-way bills again going up. These are all just the idea is to showcase how important digitization has become in this country. India is not one of the rich countries in the world. It's in fact one of the poorest, but yet notice the way India has moved up in what we call its soft infrastructure. This is how digitization has become pervasive in our lives. So what exactly are the initiatives that have been taken for sustainable development? So you have a government e-marketplace, you have the BHIM app, you have UPI, you have GSTN, you have One Nation, One Ration card. So a lot of initiatives have been taken which have made this entire item feasible. So and that's not all. You have Umang. Many of you might have the Umang app. It basically provides all the government services in one place. And then I have again shown how DigiLocker is important. You can store your important documents in the DigiLocker. Now, if you look at the sector within digitization, I noticed what's the idea of this presentation. The idea is how important digitization has been in the India growth story. And I'm now going to show you, case studies across several sectors. So these sectors, in the first one is education. So EdTech today in India is about a $2.8 billion market. This number could be around 10.4 billion markets by $10.4 billion by 2025. It's huge. So you can see in the map here, when you have MOOCs, the massive open online courses, India is one of the high growth regions in the world. So And what has been the policy imperative there? The National Digital Education Architecture, which has been set up to doing this thing. The second, sector that I'm going to speak about after education is healthcare. Healthcare market, again, currently it's about $2 billion. 1 billion is, of course, $1 billion is about 8,000 odd crores. So health tech market, not the health market. Health market is much larger, but the health tech market itself is $2 billion. It has over 5,000 startups and people who use e-pharmacies, getting information, medicine from pharmacies is now 90 lakh, 9 million. And all of us have been aware of CoWIN. CoWIN is entirely a cloud-based system that looks at registration, immunization, appointments. Most of us got 2 vaccinations. Some of us got more than that with the boosters. It was all possible through the CoWIN sort of portal. The third sector that I'm talking about is agriculture, as an illustrative example. So agriculture digitization does not really always seem in line, but there's an enormous amount of work that's happening in agriculture. Some examples are soil testing, predicting suitable environments for crop safety. You provide social platforms for farmer interaction. And more than that, you measure milk density. You understand whether crops stored in warehouses are going bad, and if so, which part of the warehouse. And provide that data in real time to the farmer who has kept his crop in the warehouse. So there are several ways agriculture is getting affected meaningfully by digitization. In fact, this market is called ag tech. Just like you have ed tech, health tech, you have ag tech. My fourth sector here is logistics. There's been a meaningful change. So logistics have had this combination of several things. You have IoT, where you track devices, you track vehicles, through GPS and stuff. So you have Internet of Things. You have automation technologies in logistics. Processes are getting automated. So one example, of course, is your baggage sorting at airports, that done at a massive scale. And then you have cloud computing. These days, agencies, entities, companies do not have to have their own hardware. They can use cloud computing environments. There is big data analytics on the enormous amount of data that gets generated. And of course, when there are registrations that happen across various players, using a blockchain technology, a distributed ledger is definitely the way to go. So logistics is again one area where there has been a significant change with technology. And the financial sector. So for financial sector, the smart way to do it is not just telling you how banks are using technology, but that, since all of us are users of that technology in some sense, but to give you the scale of that technology. So the NFS transactions today are over 20 lakh crores, the 20 trillion, if you see that number. The National Automated Clearing House, overall clearing across banks is about 22 trillion, 22 lakh crores. RuPay, which is a sort of competitor to Visa, MasterCard, the card networks, has had uses of about 800 million. That many is the number of users, the card usage. And the quantum is about 1.2 trillion. This is also a big number. And then you see RuPay card usage. So this is how across sectors, digitization has been fairly important. And what exactly is happening in this current environment? We are in a very challenging environment, and therefore the use of digitization is even more so now than earlier. And in fact, it is acting as one of the pushes for digitization. And one other thought here is, because of this inimical market environment, Indian households are reallocating their savings, because you had low interest rates. Now, of course, interest rates have started increasing. But over the last few years, Indian households have moved away from fixed income instruments towards more, and higher return instruments. So one of them is, of course, securities, either directly through the stock market or indirectly through mutual funds. So you notice how, these things have changed. And what has that done? That has increased the number of people. And this is the consequence, again, of digitization. It has increased the number of people that participate in the markets. So for the longest period of time, there was only 2% of the population that had demat accounts. That number has gone to 7%. This number is till June current number has gone to about 8%. So the number of people that have demat accounts is now 106 million. That's the sort of number that's there today. Yeah, and all that basically has increased two things. One is the amount of money people are putting into the markets from a systematic investment perspective. SIP from a SIP product has increased meaningfully. The monthly SIP number is now about 15,000 crores. It's come back a little, but it's still fairly high. And the ownership trend of the public in these markets has actually increased. Retail participation has been meaningfully high. I will skip over this project, this part. There is state-wise retail participation, investor participation. But what is interesting is a huge part of our investors are still from largely 2 to 3 states. So if you see here, you have Maharashtra, you have Gujarat, and then you have Karnataka, you have UP. These are some of the large states. Everywhere else, there is an enormous amount of scope to do further. So yes, this is the sort of retail investor participation, and this is also in terms of their activity. So retail investors earlier were not a large part of the market. Now they are a huge part of the market. And what are they doing? How do they trade? They trade through mobiles. So see the green line here. Okay, FY18, hardly 5 years back, the percentage of trades that happened through mobile phones was 5%. Today it's 20%. 1/5, 1 in every 5 trades that happens in this country happens through a mobile phone. So that's the sort of speed that's there. And one of the things that has dropped, in fact, is internet-based trading. So people, trading from laptops, trading from their desktops. That number has actually sort of come off. But mostly in this slide, what has increased is of course mobile trading. And the same thing you see in derivatives as well. And this I've already spoken about. This is the sort of why retail investments have sort of picked up. The Jam Trinity, I spoke about how Jandan accounts have sort of moved up. You have a bank account, you have Aadhaar, eKYC numbers are improving, and therefore you can have high retail investments. So yes. And in terms of the future, as if 4G was not enough, you have 5G. You have 5G, which is started across telecom providers. My friend was saying that in Delhi, 5G upload speeds were up to 540 Mbps. So that's the kind of speed people have are talking about. It is likely to be 10 times faster than 4G, and this is what's happening, and that will in turn allow a lot more to sort of take place. So I will summarize my presentation at this point. So I first spoke about how digitization has been important in the country, and I gave you some examples of how digitization has affected our lives in terms of numbers. It has permeated in several places in terms of mobile subscribers, the data that we use, the financial transactions that we do, the eKYC transactions that we do, and then we looked at 5 sectors. We looked at education, we looked at agriculture, we looked at logistics, we looked at several things, which basically showed how digitization has permeated into each of these sectors. And then we saw how another corollary of digitization is how more and more Indians are now participating in the markets, and that has only been possible because of the enormous amount of digitization, not just at the phone level. Everybody now has a 4G phone, a reasonably priced 4G phone. Everybody has access to some of the cheapest data in the world, 2 things. And the third is we have Aadhaar, which allows us to do eKYC, which allows us to uniquely and quickly identify an individual who's wanting to make a trade. So all 3 things have come up, and we've seen how supported by an inimical macro environment over the last several years, when interest rates were actually going down, and therefore returns on fixed income products had been falling, that households in India have undertaken decisions to reallocate their savings. So their savings portfolio today have higher numbers of investment in securities. both directly and indirectly. And then in terms of future, 5G is coming. So 5G is 10 times faster than 4G. You can think of the enormous amount of possibilities that are possible with 5G. So I'll stop here at this point, and I'll stop sharing. And I'm very happy to take questions on this topic. Thank you.
Is having questions, they can just start asking. You can just put down your questions into Q&A box, and one by one we'll be answering those.
Any questions?
Yeah, sir. There's a question for you in the Q&A chat box.
All right.
Yeah.
Do you think digital is the future of out-of-home advertising like billboards? Yes, entirely yes. Of course. I mean, it's very easy to have digital out-of-home advertising. Absolutely. Why would you have people sit out, climb billboards and paint when you can have several things? And this yes is not coming out of my own view and thoughts. You've seen many science fiction movies which do this. So answer is in the affirmative. What are some logistical challenges the country will face along the way? So to me, the biggest logistical challenge, as economic students, what logistical challenges are there? You need capital, you need labor. So we will need enormous amounts of capital to to build up the digital infrastructure. The advantage of a digital infrastructure is that it is soft infrastructure. It is not as asset intensive or capital intensive as various other things. To build a road, to build railways, ports, costs a far higher amount of money than putting up internet infrastructure. But the other thought, labor is the big challenge. So for me, the biggest challenge for India's digitization story is labor. A large number of Indians are there. They are young. They are ready to work, but they don't have the requisite education. So you are at Jai Hind College here, and you should know that 60% of the Indian youth have not passed 10th standard. And that number, with all the education plans that we have at this point, will come down to 40% by 2020. 40% of, and how many are these people? So we have 1.35 billion people. If you take out people who are below 15 years of age and people who are above 60 years of age, you're still left with about 500 million people. Okay, and that's the workforce. Over half of the people in this country are below 35 years of age. Now you can imagine if 60% of them are not even passing 10th standard, how do you use digitization? So that's going to be one of the biggest challenges for us. Then how do you think digitization helps the banking sector? Several ways. So let me just give you an example. Sorry if the sound is, there is Christmas Eve in the company today. So the big advantage of the banking sector is in the following. Let me just give you some numbers. 1969 was when the bank nationalization had started, and 40 years later, India's population only had 50% bank penetration, and now 90%, and a good part is due to digitization thanks to Aadhaar, and this is how it helps the banking sector Today, you can open a bank account during this call. You can open a trading account during this call. That's the advantage. And the fourth question is, do you think this would cause unemployment due to increase in technology? If you don't have the skills, then you don't have the skills. So technology and economics go together. Technology is funded by economics. High technology costs a lot of money, and therefore it needs affordable economics. And the idea of economics is that it relentlessly pushes costs down. So people are putting up this huge amounts of technology only to solve costs. And if that means an expensive labor, so labor will go out. The only way out is for skilling. You have to skill yourself. You have to skill yourself at all levels. You are students. I'm a student. So everybody today has to learn. Yeah. Any further questions?
Yeah, so there are more, like if you scroll.
It was pointed out in one of the webinars that traditional banking will change with digitization. What kind of job careers are we expecting in banking? Similarly for education. So for banking, the idea of multiple touch points will come down. So what I see is there is an urban India where branch banking is still heavy. It's a heavily branched sort of year. The number of bank branches in India is over 150,000. But it's a question about how many people actually use branches now. And as they go higher and higher up the technology curve, the need to go to branches sort of comes down. I myself have not been to a branch for a long while. So the move will be to reduce branches in higher number of urban areas, whereas in rural areas where it will still be an important factor, branches will be there. And banking roles will have to move accordingly. A large part of the intermediation job for banking is going away and taken up by fintechs. So the idea of technology permeating banking will be absolutely very important. And the same thing with education. So if you notice, the new education policy talks about how to deal with the I'm on a call. I'll call. The idea is to how do we deal with technology in education? I already spoke about EdTech in that sense. And maybe another question. Sir, what are your views on India's macroeconomic growth for Q4? I won't give you the current estimates here, but our overall number for the year is 6.5%. And is digitization of the stock market beneficial for the retail investors? It is, as it is said, that people are losing more money now. Look, it's caveat emptor. Let the buyer beware. So if you invest prudently, then why would you lose money? And always invest for the long run. That's the sort of idea. And digitalization of the stock market. The stock market has been digitalized for forever. So I work in a company which started out as an electronic exchange way back in 1994. It's considered the first fintech of the country. So has it benefited retail investors? A large part of my presentation was how retail investors have improved in the last few years. So I think that answers the question. Do you think digitization will reduce human jobs and physical college experience? First part, the answer is, it will certainly force more skills into the labor pool. If you don't have skills, then things are going to be very difficult. You have to skill up, you have to keep skilling up. And all of you might have heard of ChatGPT today. And, I think the nightmare is for teachers who will now have to differentiate between an essay written by ChatGPT or an essay written by versus an essay written by a human. But physical college experience, I don't agree. I think there the idea will be that there is no substitute for physical college experience. You learn a lot more in actual interaction with humans, in actual networking. That somehow does not happen in online experience. What is the advantage of online? However, you can get scale. So you can teach 5,000 students something that can be done which will not be possible for a human. So both have their uses. I think that is something that needs to be considered. What's the role of e-rupee in the digitalization of India? The role of e-rupee is, if I notice what the central bankers have been saying, they've basically said that e-rupee will be one more advantage in your portfolio of digital assets with you today. If you want to transfer money between each other, you can use UPI, you can use IMPS, you can use NEFT, you can use RTGS, depending on how it is. E-rupee will be one other thing. What is the difference of e-rupee? E-rupee is available typically at 2 levels, but usually a digital currency is available at 3 levels. So you have retail, you have wholesale, and then you have cross-border. In India, we have tested 2 of them. We have tested the retail e-rupee, and we have also tested it at the wholesale level. At the wholesale level, it sort of saves interbank costs, it saves clearing costs, it reduces settlement cycles, and in the retail world, it basically gives you the advantage of electronics with the anonymity of cash. That's the sort of idea. Do you think increased digitization is help us avoid a recession that we can see other countries? It will certainly go a long way in making the country more resilient, but such resilience has been seen in India even without digitalization. So, could you recommend some resources for further reading and research? There are several things. I mean, digitalization is something so important. Kindly see reports that are from the government of India. METI is one. Definitely you should go. Look at reports from consultancies. And on the NSE website, we have a monthly magazine called Market Pulse, which also looks at these things. Don't you think government is discouraging digitization by taxing cryptocurrency at 30%? No, cryptocurrency, as the central bankers have said, or RBI has said, they do not support it. What is the intrinsic value of a cryptocurrency? That's the sort of idea. It's not discouraging digitization in any manner. Happy to discuss cryptocurrency at great length later, but yeah, that's the point. One further question. What finance and economics books do you recommend reading? So again, depends on the level that you sort of have. I began with investment science by Leuenberger. That was good because I'm a math stats guy before I did finance. And so yeah, that was my first book, Investment Science by Leuenberger. And beyond that, there are many books depending on which aspect of finance and economics that you sort of look at. Any further questions?
Sir, if you have time, may I ask you one question?
Yes, ma'am.
So first of all, I kept my video on because that's one caveat of digitization is you can just hide in and the person doesn't know really what is he talking about. So I said, I'll just keep my video on. So one question that is been kind of a puzzle to me is, on one hand, we are talking about, we are seeing an India which is growing in every which way. We are seeing an India which is taking leaps and bounds in terms of GDP growth, many things which are quantifiable. But if you look at certain points in terms of literacy, basic literacy, education, these are, as you rightly pointed out in your presentation, we have people still who are not even 10th pass, that number is still high. So the question that has always bothered me is that on one hand, we have this kind of agency in the economy, which is not really, so to say, educated in the right sense, in terms of being informed, in terms of not being intimidated by the technology. If you see the way they should ideally be little afraid, little frightened about technology. And yet, on the other hand, the data that you provided gives a completely different picture, where in fact you said that even trading, a segment of trading which is happening through phones is a little more nowadays compared to laptops. So I just wanted to sound it out loudly. I don't know how to really frame this question. Do you find that there is something puzzling to it, or what is it that enables digitization to go into these grassroots levels, despite there being not really traditionally or textbook wise really ready for this kind of an experience? Yeah, I don't know how else to kind of put this puzzle.
No, it's a very fair question, ma'am. Absolutely fair question. I mean, but my answer, see, I've been looking at markets for about 22 odd years now. And before that, I was a student. So, my sense has been that there's not one India. There are many, and the enormous size of our country allows various versions of the truth to be to be available at the same time. So at the one hand, you have people who have no idea about technology, who still are very, very worried, who do not carry even mobile phones, who find it very difficult to do a basic recharge on a daily recharge. So this is the sort of world, and we have many, many people today like that, many millions, not even just many, many millions. On the other hand, you have, you have trading, you have computer science, you have thoughts which are at the forefront of global technology. So NSE is today the world's largest derivative exchange, bigger than any in China, US, Korea, Japan, much, much larger today, and not just in 2021, but 19, 20, 21, 3 years, running, India has the world's largest exchange. So in terms of technology, Indians consume the maximum amount of data in the world, more than the Chinese, more than the US. So the enormous size of this country allows these truths to be there. That is an opportunity, but it is also a matter of concern for us and something that we need to be prepared for. We cannot look at all our people who learned to use YouTube without being taught, who tried to use things without being taught, and forget about the people who are not able to do it. So a large part of our world is getting digitized today, and there is an enormous portion of this country that is still not digital savvy. So the need for education, the need for skill building at every level, not just at student level, but adult literacy also is paramount. I think some of the things that you see in the national education policy as to how do you improve, even TV literacy is absolutely important. There are papers that show how in Bangladesh, where again we have the same shortage of teachers, things like TV literacy, worked quite well. It's apparently so. These are sort of the way we have to look at this conundrum.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone have any more questions they'd like to ask?
Yeah, sir, can you tell something about digital rupee? Yes, maybe I can. So I mentioned, right, a digital rupee is a fungible token. So when you have cash in your wallet, it's your cash. There's your name isn't written on it, but it's your cash. Similarly, if that cash is given to someone, that it becomes theirs. So imagine that in an electronic sense is what your e-rupee is all about, and your digital rupee is all about. And those will be tokens, and whoever owns those tokens is the one who has them in their wallet. So that means that there is no bank account associated with that digital rupee, and it'll be just a wallet in some sense. And you have it; it's yours. That's the sort of thought at the retail level. At the wholesale level, where you have money laundering as a major issue, there will be connectivity as to who owns this, what is the account from which this money was transferred, and which account will it go to. But there, the idea will not be of settlement. So picture this. There are two companies, C1 and C2. C1 has its bank 1, B1, and then C2 has its bank B2. Now, a typical transaction between C1 and C2 would involve some merchandise going from C1 to C2 and some money going from C2 to C1. Typically, that happens between C1 to B1, B1 to RBI, RBI to B2, B2 to C2. This is the sort of loop that happens in this case, in every case today. But when you have a digital rupee, then you will not need actually RBI. First of all, in between, C1 can talk to B1, B1, B2 will settle the rule. That's it. So this can save costs enormously. Typically this entire loop through C1, C2, B1, B2 takes 3 days, 4 days. This can settle instantaneously. So in about November, the RBI tried a digital currency at the wholesale level with a T+0 settlement. So I can't talk about trading, clearing, settlement now. This period is too short, but just read up about it and see how it can really shorten settlement cycles. the last question that I have here is, when we spoke about digitization, there's also a con to it, like not having correct information or even cyber crimes. Do you think the government are taking steps to avoid it? Oh, yes, of course. So the number of initiatives that are being taken to guard against cyber crimes can only rival the number of initiatives that are being taken to improve digitization. And this is not just at a government level. Just go to the annual reports of or integrated reports of any of the listed companies, and when you see the core risks that they face, read the MDAs, the management discussion and analysis, and you will notice that cyber crime, cyber risk is one of the core worries that are there for all listed companies. So this is, one cannot speak enough about the risk of cyber risk actually. And not having correct information, yes, typically we understand something as signal to noise ratios. So in the world of digitization, the signal to noise ratios actually go down. So there is a hell of a lot more information that was than what was available earlier, and the importance of choice, the importance of making the right decisions becomes more important than ever. It is now that we have to make the right decisions and understand and make information of the data that comes to us. So this is again one of the responsibilities. Many of you as students would remember, the hero, with great power comes great responsibility. That's what it is today.